Welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Disciples and Devotees. Today again, we're honored to have Kittu with us. Namaste, Kittu. And we are in the chapter 15, isn't
Chapter
it?
15 of the Ideal of Human.
Of the Ideal of Human Unity. At the very beginning.
Huh?
At the very beginning of the chapter.
Yeah, right from the beginning.
Good.
Now this chapter, in this chapter, Sri Aurobindo is speculating as to some lines by which the ideal of world unity may be fulfilled. Because in politics and human nature, things are constantly changing. So, so what favored form, force, system among the many that are possible now or likely to emerge hereafter will be entrusted by the secret will in things with the external unification of mankind. This is important, that ultimately it is that secret will in things that is guiding the destiny and fate of mankind. Is an interesting, and to those who can look beyond the narrow horizon of passing events, a fascinating subject of speculation. But unfortunately, it can at present be nothing more. So, will you speculate? Anmol, do you think that world unity is around the corner? And if it is, what is the shape that it will take? Is it round the corner?
I think it can only be speculation now.
No, so two things. One is whether such a unity will take place, and if such a unity may take place, what is the form that it will take, right?
Yeah.
Because that again, is it world state, or is it the unity of a federal unity of all the worlds coming together? And I will take a slightly positive view of things. There are many areas in the world today where we are really coming together, like health, like preservation of monuments. I mean, mankind has recognized that whatever the culture, we must preserve those monuments. Health belongs to everybody. And terrorism is beginning to create an impact on almost all the countries of the world, right? America has woken up, Europe has woken up very strongly. Asia has always been in the thick of it. Australia also is now taking all kinds of steps, right? And Russia is very clear about terrorism, right? But where it comes to economics and politics, human nature comes up, and then there are all kinds of obstacles.
But you say that you're taking a more positive view.
That is why health, what is it called? Those treasures of the past,
Monuments.
monuments, etc. So there we are working together. And terrorism, slightly beginning to work together.
Okay, I have two questions. What about the destruction of forests and land,
That is where
and the toxins in the seas and the waterways,
climate change also.
right?
Now climate change, there is a competition between climate change and development. There are many people, many countries which want to develop their industries in a big way, even at the cost of climate change, right? Or the climate. And naturally the industrial countries who are already developed are very aggressive that the others shouldn't. But they say, let us first reach that stage, then we'll talk the same language. So But because of this intercommunication and because of climate change affects the whole world. Some wrong explosion in one part of the world affects everybody else. So ultimately, I think we'll slowly move there. But as I said, economics and politics, and this mother herself picked out that they are most stubborn because they represent really the lower vital in most human beings. Enlightened vital, of course, you can have good political understanding and good economic understanding. So, he is presenting certain ideas which may take place, all speculation. So, we have ruled out of consideration as a practical impossibility in the present international conditions and the present state of international mentality and morality the idea of an immediate settlement on the basis of an association of free nationalities, although this would be obviously the best basis, the ideal basis. So, it is a little better now than what it was when he wrote this book. And those are the areas which I mentioned where, there is certainly a willingness to come together, but it is not yet enough. And he is giving reasons why it's ruled out of consideration. For it should take as its founding motive power a harmony of the two great principles actually in presence, nationalism and internationalism. Now, your comments. Compatible? Nationalism and internationalism. Citizen of the world and citizen of the
Nation.
nation. Can they harmonize? Ideally and practically.
Ideally, yes.
Ideally, yes.
Practically, it is usually at the cost of, there is a kind of, you have to give up something.
Auroville is an experiment in that. Ashram is not an experiment in that, because here you have to be a disciple of Sri Aurobindo. But in Auroville, you have got, I don't know how many, 54 countries today, I think, no?
Yes.
Representing all different temperaments, cultures, etc., etc. Now, if that succeeds as a laboratory, as an experimental laboratory, it will have its impact. But the question is, has it succeeded or not?
I think that's clear.
Yes. So, its adoption would mean that the problem of human unity would be approached at once on a rational and a sound moral basis. See, he's not bringing in the word spirituality. Even if you are reasonable and ethical in your approach, there is very good chance of understanding, among all different people. And a sound moral recognition on one side of the right of all large natural groupings of men to live and to be themselves, and the enthronement of respect for national liberty as an established principle of human conduct. National liberty as an established principle of human conduct. On the whole, if you look at, as I see it, the majority of the countries today probably accept this. There are a few countries that want to dominate and exploit. Stands out China and North Korea. But I would think that there are many countries in the world which do the same thing much more subtly. not so grossly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that also will not do, because subtly you can hide for some time, but sooner or later the problem will come out openly. So that is why transparency is the key, even for world unity. The motives must be made clear and the action must be made clear. And that's a very sound principle in collective life. Agreed? You have something.
No, digesting.
So on one side is this, and on the other there is an adequate sense of the need for order, help, a mutual, a common participation, a common life and interest in the unified and associated human race. Which means that you don't think only of your own little backyard, but are prepared to think in larger terms, which always means a certain element of sacrifice. When we are living in a collectivity, even in a small collectivity, if you want to maintain order and harmony, there has to be some sacrifice, especially by the more powerful and endowed, and understanding from below, right? So, so the next sentence is beautiful. The ideal society or state is that in which respect for individual liberty and free growth of the personal being to its perfection is harmonized with the needs, efficiency, solidarity, natural growth and organic perfection of the corporate being. So individual and corporate being have to be harmonized. Corporate being the society or nation. In an ideal aggregate of all humanity in the international society or state, national liberty and free national growth and self-realization ought in the same way to be progressively harmonized with the solidarity and unified growth and perfection of the human race. That is why I call it nationalism and internationalism. They can certainly be harmonized, but it means quite a high raising of the level of consciousness of the average human being.
So, what do you feel about America producing more nuclear arms and Russia doing the same?
Now, this is, I think, based on a very deep mutual distrust. Right? And if one side gets a little more powerful, immediately there is a reaction on the other side. And those who are weaker and feel threatened either by this side or that side will tend to ally. That creates more and more problems. So there has to be a deep understanding between Trump and Putin. I've just given the names, right? The latest news is that, news or commentary, that Putin has won for the sixth time, I think, consecutively. But it was a completely false vote. And I got an article where it says even dogs voted for Putin, which is a way of saying that it was all manipulated. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I've received.
The news today was that Trump congratulated him.
Yes. No, that is political.
That is diplomacy.
That is diplomacy. Because he can't say that I'm unhappy. He has to congratulate him. Have you got any feedback about the elections? True, genuine, or?
Always some percentage could be there, but it cannot be completely false like that.
I
Something is there.
I intuitively feel that till the time America also becomes a little softer towards other people, a strong opposition is necessary, and Putin represents such a strong opposition.
And
So,
I agree with her that even if there have been some wrong votes and all that, on the whole, Putin is popular.
exactly.
Yes.
And Putin is liked by the Russian people.
Yes.
Yes.
He has given them a status,
Yes.
a kind of dignity, and he looks after their well-being reasonably well.
I can't say that we start living worse than before him.
Yeah.
We start living better. I can see that improvement.
It's getting better, you say?
Yes,
Yes.
I can see that.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Fundamentally, if you go back to the roots, as Shrivandu in the very last chapter stresses very clearly, that the capitalistic society and the communistic society can harmonize. They are not antagonistic. Which means that liberty and equality can also harmonize. Right? Now, if there is liberty, usually there is inequality. And if you want to bring about equality, you have to come back, take away your liberty. Now, this I don't know how you will solve except if there is a raising of the human consciousness. And again, I am stressing not necessarily to spiritual level, to the higher mind, rational, understanding, cooperative, right? That is already a very big step towards, right? So, he says there is a little chance of such an unprecedented good fortune for mankind. Ideal conditions cannot be expected, for they demand, see, this is very important, this sentence, a psychological clarity, a diffused reasonableness. Can you explain this to me? A diffused reasonableness. It's a word which I found that all my students stumble.
Widespread.
Huh?
Widespread.
You see, reason is an instrument. This morning with my student I had this class. But I can argue on this side, I can argue on that side. Because it can see many points of view. Now, a logical reasonableness will mean that this is right and that is wrong. A diffuse reasonableness will see that, well, all of us are right. We have to only now decide which one is more right in the present situation. And that automatically softens you. Right? Then you are not violently anti-communist or violently anti-capitalist. And this is the essence of Sri Aurobindo. He said, don't destroy the capitalists. Right? But at the same time, equality and socialism is also very much necessary. So it's always a balancing factor. Right? So a diffused reasonableness and scientific intelligence, again very important. Never express an opinion except with scientific intelligence, which means what? You have got all the data, you have classified them, you have analyzed them, and then you give an opinion. So if you can develop these two qualities, as human beings we become better and it is more easy to live with in a society. And then, of course, that is very important, and above all, a moral elevation and rectitude, to which neither the mass of mankind nor its leaders and rulers have yet made any approach. I would like to believe that India is a little more lucky from this point of view, that we have a leader who is full of rectitude and no self-interest. At least as far as we can see now. Time alone will show whether he is becoming arrogant and etc. etc. So these are qualities that are very important. Huh? Psychological clarity, diffuse reasonableness, scientific intelligence, moral elevation and rectitude. And this we can apply to ourselves. If you can develop this within ourselves, we become good human beings.
Any other world leaders that you see?
I don't know. Very closely have not followed. Any other world leaders?
I think Colombia.
Huh?
The leader of Colombia is a good one.
Who?
The leader of Colombia.
He won the Nobel Prize for peace with the
I have no idea at
FARC
all.
rebels.
But in the Indian subcontinent, I can't see anybody else. So, as he says, in their absence, not reason and justice and mutual kindliness, but the trend of forces and their practical and legal adjustment must determine the working out of this as of other problems. So now this is a very important thing in the world, because whatever happens is not by our intelligent, it is the play of forces. So in the next paragraph he says, I'll read that a little later, that ultimately it is the forces that are deciding things. And we react according to our reaction depends on how we look at the forces. It can be moral, it can be taking full advantage of it, it can be exploiting it, right? Or it can be using it for a higher purpose. So ultimately it is these forces that determine everything. So he shows us the difficulty, and then I'll read this paragraph, which is very important. Forces take the first place in actual effectuation. See, in every political step that is taken by a democratic political leader, where ultimately he has to refer to the people, ultimately, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, right? He is all the time watching the forces. And he throws out a force and watches the reaction. And then he'll adjust according to that. Right? It is hardly ever that I will do the right thing even if people don't accept it, because it is good for them in the long run. And if you do that, you will lose your vote. So, politics is a game of where all the time you cannot do the right thing even if you know that it is good.
Even the shloka is not quoted fully.
What?
The ahimsa paramo dharma.
That is only half.
Exactly.
The second half is most important.
Dharma hinsa tathaiva cha.
Yes.
For the protection of dharma, hinsa is equally, for the protection of dharma, hinsa is equally valid.
But there is another boy who, Ajit Datta, he is the grandson of Dilip Da. He was a very bright student and he was deeply interested in politics. So I told him, take interest in politics and if possible, get involved. And I told him one more thing, which Mother herself had said, that I want someone in politics who doesn't belong to party. No party. India first, India always. And then humanity also. I told him, you do that. He went to Delhi, spent quite some time there, has established contact with the PMO. He is a great admirer of Narendra Modi. but he doesn't belong to a party. And so he can take positions, according to the situation. And he has written a few articles which have come out in The Pioneer and some other journals, which are really good. I believe that he is contributing more of Shrivindo in the political space. See, the moment you join a party, you are already locked up. And then when the whip comes, right, you know what a whip is. In the parliament, you have to be present and you have to vote in a certain way. You start losing your independence. And I know many BJP politicians who have told me that very often we disagree. Not very often, sometimes we disagree. Although on the whole we are in agreement, but in some areas we disagree. But at least in the party forums inside, they can speak out loudly. And that is not possible even in the Congress. That is out of the question. So anyway, forces take their place in actual effectuation. Moral principles, reason, justice, only so far as forces can be compelled or persuaded to admit them. And see the next one. Or, as more often happens, use them as subservient aids or inspiring battle cries, a camouflage for their own interests. Those who criticize Narendra Modi, Sonia Gandhi today, dramabazi, right? That he's using all these big words. He doesn't mean a single one of them, right? So this often happens, and it's always happening in politics. Whether it is true of Narendra Modi or not, time alone will show. Right? So ideas sometimes leap out as armed forces and break their way through the hedge of unideal powers. It's a very important sentence. The power of the idea is far greater than the power of actualities. It takes a little longer to have its impact, but it's a very powerful force. So always as you move up to higher in the consciousness, on the physical consciousness there is some effect. On the vital consciousness, a much more effect. On the idea level, a little slower, but much deeper. And then on the spiritual level, of course, it's very powerful if it is actual and effective. But it has to be a genuine spiritual power. So you see, the French Revolution threw out three ideas: liberty, equality, fraternity. It took more than 150 years for the ideal of liberty to be established worldwide. Otherwise, it was only partly in Europe, and that too not in 1789. It took more than 150 years, 120 years. 200 years later, the idea of liberty and even of equality is being accepted. But fraternity has become association. We join together for the same goal. We are in the same cricket team, we play together. The moment the match is over, we are on opposite sides on many things, right? So fraternity is possible only when there is a spiritual revolution. Until then, we can try all this. They don't harm, but...
Mother said, collective harmony is only possible for the divine.
Yes, which means on a spiritual level. So sometimes they reverse their position and make interest the subordinate helpers a fuel for their own blaze. Sometimes they conquer by martyrdom. A very, very important thing. Indira Gandhi, she declared emergency in 75, and for 2 years she ruled with an iron hand, removing all the freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that, right? put thousands of opposition leaders in jail. When the elections were held, she was swept out. Not one seat in North India. In South, she got some. Then these fellows, the Janata Party, led by Charan Singh, Jagjivan Ram and Moraji Desai alternately, they decided to attack her very, very strongly, completely ignoring certain other facts, like Jayaprakash Narayan's call to the army and the police to revolt, which was very wrong, right? But her reaction was excessive. Agreed. She was delighted when they started attacking her, and ultimately she provoked them by a few speeches to put her in prison. The moment she was put into prison, she was delighted. And what happened was, Charan Singh was holding a meeting. At that time, he wanted to be Prime Minister. He was the Deputy Prime Minister. He was holding a meeting in that big area in Delhi. I forgot the name. What is it called? Anyway, what she did was that she sent somebody with a big bouquet to Charan Singh when he was addressing the whole 2 lakhs of people. And my God, what an applause Indira Gandhi got, although she was not present. That weakened him completely. He became soft. Then she started playing a game on him. She said, look, we'll make you Prime Minister. We will give you the support from outside. And he bit the bait. He came out. The government collapsed. Congress supported. He got into power. He was made Prime Minister. He was sworn in as Prime Minister. Even before the first parliamentary meeting, Congress withdrew its support. He collapsed. So this martyrdom, and then elections were held. And this martyrdom helped her to win a 2/3 majority. So if you know how to play your cards and pretend that you are such a good man, but that you have been unfortunately and wrongly put, and she used this extremely well. So, so anyway, sometimes they conquer by martyrdom, but ordinarily they have to work not only by a half covert pressure, but by accommodation to powerful forces, or must even bribe and cajole them, or work through and behind them. This is the whole difficulty of life. When you want to get something done, between the idea and the implementation, so many forces are there, right? So you have to bribe the forces, you have to cajole the forces, you have to somehow persuade, and you will get 60% or 70% of what you think is right. Even if you get 60%, it is very good, right? So don't be overcritical. Ideals are wonderful. Implementation is very difficult. That is why whenever somebody comes and blasts me about Auroville, I say, I agree with everything that you are saying, but there is a but. It stands for a very high ideal, and that ideal to be implemented will need a very major change. So don't be in a hurry. But if you destroy the idea, you are destroying something very valuable for humanity. Right? So this is very important. So work through or behind them. So I told this to Siddhavan that there are pockets of Auroville which are wonderful, which are really in the true spirit. Just keep pushing them on and see that they remain in the right. It will have its impact. But because so much is going wrong, well, that is part of the game. So It cannot be otherwise until the average and the aggregate man become more of an intellectual, moral, and spiritual being, and less predominantly the vital and emotional, half reasoning human animal. This is the major step that we have to take, and that has to start here in the ashram. We have to become more of an intellectual, moral, and spiritual being, and less of a vital and emotional, half reasoning human animal. And as long as that is so, even the ashram will not grow.
Thank you, Kittu.